For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Tabi Madiba. Master Life Coach Judy Klipin joins me to discuss the book titled Recover from Burnout, Life Lessons to Regain Your Passion and Purpose. Welcome, Judy.
Thank you.
Please explain to us, what message are you hoping to get across with this book?
Sure. Okay, so my main message, I think, with this book is that burnout is a result not of doing too much, but of doing too much of the wrong thing. And that doesn't mean morally wrong things, but things that are wrong for you. And I think that what happens, we get burnout because we force ourselves to do something that we actually don't want to do. So we say yes to things that we really want to say no to. And we find ourselves doing a whole lot of things that we don't want to do, and that makes us burnt out.
Mm-hmm. And can you please explain to us the difference between burnout and depression? Because I think it's not the same thing.
Yeah, well, it's similar but very different, and thank you, it's a good question, because a lot of people mix them up, and often people think they're depressed when they're burnt out, or think they're burnt out when they're depressed. So my simple way of differentiating between them is depression is a feeling of being tired of life, whereas burnout is a feeling of being tired from life.
Mm-hmm. And burnout is said to affect our body, minds, emotions, spirit, and relationships, which can lead to depression, heart diseases, and more. What does one have to do to address this burnout?
Well, hopefully one doesn't get burnt out in the first place. But if you are burnt out, the first thing we need to do is to regain our energy. And there in the book I talk about a whole lot of tools and techniques that you can do that with: spending time tuning into your body, listening to what you need, giving yourself what you need, resting more, saying no to things that aren't serving you, asking for help, really kind of being very clear about not spending more energy than you have. And then once you have regained your energy, then it's very important to put practices into place that help you maintain it. And so the second section in the book is all about helping you to understand what are the underlying thoughts and beliefs and behaviors that have led you to push yourself to the point of burnout. And it gives you some tools and techniques to try and be more mindful about how you spend your energy and what you say yes to and what you say no to, and all of those things that had led you to burnout in the first place.
And what are some of the burnout issues you have seen as a life coach?
I have seen a whole range of, I've seen stay-at-home moms who've got burnout, moms of young babies who've got burnout. I've seen management consultants who've got burnout, people who work in the advertising industry with burnout, teachers, doctors, nurses, journalists, anyone I think who is in a high stress environment, whether that's at home or at work or just in the world generally. And who also finds themselves having to push themselves to do some things that don't feel right or that don't feel meaningful for them. So really, I've seen burnouts, men, women, young people, old people, across the board. I think everybody, I always say it's an equal opportunities illness. It can affect anybody.
And you stated that one of the most important steps in recovering from burnout is to reconnect yourself and your spirit. Can you explain to us how so?
I think that we get burnout when we become so disconnected from ourselves, from our bodies and from our emotions and our minds, that we actually don't know how to look after ourselves properly. So often with my clients, when they arrive, they might come in at the end of the day, at the end of the working day, and I just ask them to sit quietly for a while and not do anything for 5 minutes. And then I ask them what they're feeling. And then they realize that actually they have got a headache. Or they realize that they need to go to the toilet very urgently or whatever. And when we explore that, we realize it's because they have not stopped running since they left the house in the morning. They haven't had anything to drink. They haven't had anything to eat. They kept saying to themselves, I'm going to go to the toilet after this meeting, but they kind of never got there. And I think, so that's what I mean, that when we can reconnect with ourselves, when we can just take the time to sit quietly and spend some time thinking about what it is that we want and what we need, then our bodies tell us and our emotions tell us. because we also tend to be very other-centered. People who get burnout tend to be very what I call other-centered, which means that we are very concerned with other people's needs and wants, and we don't think about our own needs and wants. So if we can make that time, and it really doesn't have to take a long time, it can be 20 minutes a day or even 5 minutes a day to start, to reconnect with ourselves, then we remember what it is that we want, and we remember what we need, and it really is the most powerful, I think, and the most important step in our recovery.
And are you saying it is important to never ignore what our bodies are telling us, as it can lead to the path that end in misery or stress?
Absolutely. Our bodies are always giving us very important information. If they're telling us we need to sleep, we need to sleep, not push through and take another Red Bull. If they're telling us that we have got a headache, we need to think, why have I got a headache? Am I dehydrated? Have I not had any fresh air for a while? Our bodies are our best source of information about what's going on with us, and we ignore them all the time, and that is why we have such a problem with diabetes, with obesity, with strokes, with high blood pressure. This country is really, we are so disconnected from our own bodies and our own needs and wants that we really treat ourselves extremely badly.
And what is the most powerful and effective interventional tool for burnout recovery and prevention?
What I've just said. I genuinely believe that if you can work your way up to 20 minutes every day, where you are just with yourself, you're not talking to anybody, you're not listening to anything. I often say to clients, if you're driving to work in the morning, don't listen to the radio, if you're in a taxi, don't be on your cell phone, just be with yourself and use that time to tune into yourself. Ask yourself my magic 3 questions, which are, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? And what do I want to do about it? So maybe I'm tired because I didn't get enough sleep last night, so I'm going to go to bed earlier tonight. We ask ourselves those questions. We also use that time to think about our day, to think about what we're going to say no to. It might be saying no to spending 4 hours on social media so that we don't finish our work in time and we have to take work home tonight. It might be not going to a meeting that it's not necessary for us to go to. Whatever it is, we need to think about, what am I going to say no to today? What am I going to ask for help with today? And how am I going to look after myself today? Honestly, that is the most powerful thing you can do for yourself.
And can you please take us through the process of maintaining strength?
Okay, so that is in the second half of the book, and it really is, I think it'll take us a few hours for me to go through all of that, but essentially it's about checking in with yourself, and it's about recognizing the not very helpful patterns of thinking that we get into, or the others-centeredness that I speak about. Because when we are others-centered, we often end up doing things that we don't want to do. We don't want to let somebody down. We don't want to make them feel upset with us. So we end up saying, oh yes, I can go to that meeting. Oh yes, no, I'm fine, I don't need any help. I know exactly what you're asking me to do. And then actually our boss goes away and we've got no idea what they want us to do. But we're so scared of saying, I actually don't know how to do this, can you help me please? That we try, and it's so anxiety provoking, and we're trying to work out what it is that we're supposed to be doing, and we don't want to ask anybody for help, and we can't say no, and we become more and more and more and more and more anxious, and anxiety is very exhausting, and it doesn't serve us because we don't do a good job. And then it's a whole kind of self-fulfilling prophecy that then our boss gets cross with us, which is exactly what we were trying to avoid doing, and we get onto this like hamster wheel of trying to look after ourselves, when actually the best possible thing we can do is just stop, think, is this something I can do? Is this something I need to ask for help with? And be honest about it.
And lastly, can you please talk to us about the 5 C's you created to help people think through how they want to respond to various demands being made on them?
Okay, so that's also related to other-centeredness. So often we find ourselves reacting rather than responding. So somebody comes and says, can you do this for me? And rather than taking a few seconds to think about, is this something I want to do, and is this something I'm able to do, we say, yes, of course. And then we go off, and that scenario I just explained, we don't know what's going on. We cross because now it means we can't go home and we're going to miss the movie or whatever it is. Whereas if we do the 5 C's, it helps us to make a mindful choice. So the 5 C's are, the first C is to get clear. What is being asked of me? and whether or not I'm prepared to do this. Okay, I'm happy to do it, I feel able to do it. So it's very much about getting clear about what is the request and what is my response to the request. The second C is to choose. So we're choosing our response. So rather than automatically reacting and saying yes or no, sometimes we say no when we should say yes, we actually think, okay, well, this is what the situation is. Do I have time to do it? Do I have the capacity to do it? Am I able to do it? Do I feel comfortable? Choose. So maybe it'll be yes, but I need some help. Or yes, you'll get it by tomorrow. Or yes, I can do it for you by next week. And sometimes it might be no, I don't have capacity to do that. Or, no, it's not in my it's not in my frame of reference. So that's the C. The second C is to choose. The third C is to make a commitment or a contract. So maybe it will say I can do it, but I might need some help. So you commit to yourself that if you need the help, you can ask for it, or you commit to your boss if you need the help, you're able to ask for it. And the contracting is getting clear on what everybody expects. So yes, I can do it, but I'm only going to be able to do it by next week Friday. Is that okay with you? And then you and your boss both know exactly what is expected of you and when it is expected by. So it's a kind of a contract about what the outcomes are going to be. And then the fourth C is to think through the consequences. What will the consequences be if I do this, good or bad? And what will the consequences be if I don't do this, good or bad? And the fifth C is communicate. How am I going to communicate this? So that, how I've just described it, can be in relation to something that's going on at work, but you can also use it in your personal life. So say, for instance, your granny wants you to take her to church for 5 hours every Sunday, okay? So we get clear. Granny wants to go to church for 5 hours every Sunday. I actually am studying at university and I don't have time to take. I don't have that time to give. So let's get clear on that. That's what she needs. This is what I need. How do I choose? Maybe I choose to drop her off and fetch her. Or maybe I choose to take her for an hour. Or maybe I choose to take her once a month instead of every week. And then you have the conversation with her where you commit and contract with each other. We'll do it once a week, we'll do it once a month, I'll drop you and fetch you, whatever. That's the contract that you come up with, and you commit to her to do that. You need to sometimes think through to yourself, what will the consequences be? Because, grannies, they can be a little demanding. And so she might say, next round, we've agreed on once a month, but the week after you've taken, she might say, I really want to go to church. I need to see my friend. Please, can you take me to church? You need to know that is going to happen. So you can say, I'm sorry, Granny, I can't do it, so that you are prepared to stand up for yourself. And she might say, oh, but you're so awful, and I promise I won't ask you again, and you need to be firm. Because you need to think through the consequences. Because if you crumble, she's going to ask you again the following week. And if you don't crumble, she might get cross with you. She might say, oh, you're a terrible granddaughter. I've been so good to you your whole life. How can you treat me like this? And you have to be firm. So if you think through the consequences, forewarned is forearmed. Then, I knew this was going to happen. I just have to say, I'm sorry, Granny, we've had this conversation. I can't help you until next month. And then again, to communicate. How are you going to communicate? And I often say to my clients, there's telling and there's showing. And showing is much more effective than telling. So we have to tell sometimes, but we always have to show as well. It's no good saying once a month and then saying, oh, well, right, then I'll take you again next week. We have to say, no, Granny, we said once a month. I can't do it again until next month.
Thank you very much. That was Judy Klipin speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about recover from burnout, life lessons to regain passion and purpose.